What if your late night habits weren't lazy, but signs of higher intelligence? Think about it. While the rest of the world shuts down, something about nighttime pulls you in. The quiet feels different. Your thoughts move more clearly. Ideas connect faster. And yet you've probably heard it your whole life. Staying up late is bad. Successful people wake up early. Night owls are unproductive, undisciplined, or avoiding responsibility, but psychology tells a different story. What if your preference for the night isn't about bad habits at all? What if it reflects the way your brain processes information, emotion, and creativity? To understand this, we have to look beyond sleep schedules and into how the brain actually works. Human beings are not designed to all operate on the same internal clock. The idea that everyone should wake up early and function best in the morning is a social rule, not a biological one. Psychologists refer to this as a chronotype. Some people are naturally morning-oriented, others are naturally evening-oriented. This variation isn't a flaw, but an evolutionary feature. In early human societies, having people wake at different times increased survival. Some watched the environment early in the morning, others stayed alert late at night. The brain adapted to different roles, not one universal rhythm. What's interesting is that research consistently shows a relationship between evening chronotypes and higher levels of abstract thinking, reasoning ability, and cognitive flexibility. That doesn't mean all night owls are smarter than early risers, but it does mean intelligence often shows up differently depending on when the brain prefers to be active. Meanwhile, highly intelligent people often experience the daytime world as mentally noisy. Conversations, notifications, expectations, and social interactions constantly pull attention outward. In some minds, that stimulation is motivating. For others, especially analytical and introspective thinkers, it's distracting. Intelligent brains tend to crave depth over volume. They want sustained focus, not constant interruption. During the day, that kind of focus is difficult. At night, it becomes natural. When the world quiets down, the intelligent mind doesn't slow down, it sharpens. Neuroscience helps explain why this happens. During periods of low external stimulation, the brain's default mode network becomes more active. This network is associated with imagination, introspection, self-reflection, future planning, and creative problem solving. Nighttime naturally activates this system. With fewer sensory demands, the brain turns inward. Thoughts become more connected. Ideas flow more freely. For intelligent individuals, this mental state feels productive rather than exhausting. This is why many people report their best ideas coming late at night. Not because night is magical, but because the brain finally has space to operate the way it prefers. Another key trait of intelligent people is their relationship with motivation. They are less driven by routine and more driven by mental engagement. When their mind is stimulated, they can ignore fatigue longer than average. They don't stay up late because they lack discipline. They stay up because their brain is actively working. Reading, thinking, researching, creating, or solving problems can feel more rewarding than sleep at the moment. This isn't impulsivity, it's delayed gratification working in a different direction. Intelligent individuals are often willing to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term insight or satisfaction. Highly intelligent people are more introspective than average. They analyze their thoughts, question their assumptions, and reflect on experiences rather than simply reacting to them. Nighttime supports this psychological process. There are fewer social expectations with no pressure to perform and no need to respond. The mind can explore itself without interruption. Thoughts that were suppressed during the day resurface. Unanswered questions return. Ideas connect in unexpected ways. For an introspective mind, this feels energizing. Meanwhile, creativity isn't about inspiration, it's about connection. Intelligent people are often strong divergent thinkers, meaning they generate multiple ideas from a single concept and see patterns others miss. Divergent thinking thrives when the mind isn't being constantly redirected. Nighttime creates the perfect conditions for this. Silence, solitude, and lack of interruption allow the brain to wander productively. This wandering is cognitive exploration. That's why so many writers, inventors, programmers, and thinkers historically preferred working late at night. It's for optimization. Intelligent people often experience emotions more deeply and more complexly. They're sensitive to nuance, contradiction, and ambiguity. During the day, emotional regulation takes effort. Social interaction requires masking, adjusting, and managing impressions. At night, that pressure disappears. The emotional quiet of nighttime allows deeper emotional processing. For intelligent individuals, this can feel grounding rather than draining. Another trait strongly linked to intelligence is independence of thought. Intelligent people are less likely to accept norms without questioning them. The early morning ideals is one of those norms. Choosing to function at night often reflects a willingness to prioritize internal rhythms over external expectations. This same willingness appears in intellectual exploration, creative risk-taking, and original thinking. This is why smart people just follow certain structures. Nighttime is solitary by nature. Most of the world is asleep. For some people, this feels uncomfortable. For others, it feels freeing. Intelligent individuals tend to tolerate solitude well. They don't rely on constant interaction to feel stimulated. In fact, solitude often enhances their thinking. Without social noise shaping behavior, the mind can explore ideas more honestly and deeply. Highly intelligent people enter flow states more easily. When deeply engaged, they lose track of time. Hours pass unnoticed. Nighttime makes entering flow state easier because interruptions are rare. This is why many night owls look up and realize it's 3 a.m. without meaning to. Their brain wasn't avoiding rest, it was fully absorbed. When you put all of this together, a pattern emerges. Night owls aren't necessarily undisciplined. Many are simply aligned with a cognitive rhythm that favors quiet, focus, and internal processing. Forcing these individuals into strict early morning routines only reduces performance. Creativity suffers, focus drops, and mental clarity fades. It's not always about sleep quantity, but about alignment. Psychology doesn't claim one schedule is superior. It shows that intelligence expresses itself differently depending on cognitive wiring. For a long time, psychology treated night owls as a deviation from normal behavior. Early research framed late sleepers as having poor self-control, low discipline, or unhealthy habits. But as the field matured, researchers began to realize something important. Night owls were adapting differently. Once researchers separated sleep timing from sleep quality, the narrative began to shift. The real question was no longer why some people stayed up late, but why certain minds preferred operating during those hours. When intelligence researchers entered the conversation, the findings became more uncomfortable for conventional wisdom. One of the most persistent misconceptions about intelligence is that it's tied to routine. Society tends to reward people who follow schedules well. Wake up early, be consistent, and be predictable. But intelligence, psychologically speaking, is about adaptability. High intelligence is strongly associated with cognitive autonomy. This means intelligent individuals are less dependent on external rules to guide behavior. They're more likely to regulate themselves internally. This internal regulation doesn't disappear at night. In fact, it often strengthens. Night owls frequently report that they feel more mentally organized after dark. This isn't because the night creates intelligence. It's because the environment removes competing demands on attention. Several large-scale studies across different countries have found a modest but consistent correlation between evening chronotype and higher IQ scores. These studies controlled for education level, age, and socioeconomic status to isolate cognitive differences. The results didn't suggest that staying up late makes you smarter. Instead, they suggested that people with higher intelligence are more likely to tolerate or prefer later schedules. One explanation is cognitive autonomy. People with higher intelligence rely less on external cues to regulate behavior. They're more self-directed. Instead of responding to the clock, they respond to internal cognitive states like focus, curiosity, or mental momentum. When the mind is engaged, sleep becomes secondary. This autonomy shows up across multiple areas of life, not just sleep. Intelligent individuals are more likely to question traditions, routines, and expectations. They ask why things are done a certain way instead of assuming they must be. Sleep schedules are no exception. One influential psychological theory suggests that intelligence evolved to help humans adapt to novel situations. Routine behaviors don't require much intelligence, novel behaviors do. From an evolutionary standpoint, humans are naturally programmed to sleep soon after dark. Artificial lighting is a very recent development. Choosing to stay awake late requires overriding an ancient biological signal. Researchers propose that individuals with higher intelligence are more capable of overriding instinct when it serves a purpose. They don't blindly follow biological defaults, they adjust behavior to match cognitive needs. This ability to override instinct is flexible. Night owls often demonstrate this flexibility not just in sleep patterns, but in thinking style, emotional regulation, and decision-making. Neuroscience adds another layer to this connection. Brain scans and hormonal studies suggest that night-oriented individuals often have more flexible circadian rhythms. Rather than being locked into rigid peaks and crashes, their alertness curve is smoother. This allows for sustained cognitive effort later in the day. This flexibility supports higher-level thinking. Tasks that require abstraction, planning, and creativity benefit from prolonged alertness rather than short bursts. Morning-oriented individuals often excel at routine, execution, and consistency. Evening-oriented individuals often excel at exploration, synthesis, and innovation. Neither is better. They are optimized for different cognitive demands. One psychological trait strongly associated with intelligence is self-regulation. Intelligent people can maintain focus without constant external enforcement. They don't require alarms, reminders, or strict schedules to stay engaged. Their motivation is internal. This is why many intelligent night owls struggle in environments that demand rigid morning schedules, not because they lack discipline, but because their discipline operates differently. They don't need structure to function. Too much structure can actually suppress their output. Nighttime offers freedom from imposed structure. The mind can move at its own pace. Creativity research consistently shows that optimal creative performance depends on alignment between task type and chronotype. For night owls, creativity peaks later in the day. Studies measuring divergent thinking, idea generation, and associative fluency show stronger performance in the evening for evening-oriented individuals. This isn't a coincidence. Creativity requires relaxed cognitive control. The brain must allow unusual connections without immediately filtering them out. At night, cognitive control loosens slightly. This allows ideas to flow more freely. For intelligent individuals, this loosened control doesn't lead to chaos, it leads to insight. During the day, the brain prioritizes efficiency. Decisions must be made quickly. Social norms guide behavior. There's pressure to perform. At night, those pressures fade. The brain shifts from execution mode to reflection mode. This shift is especially beneficial for intelligent individuals who process information deeply. They don't just think about what happened, they think about why it happened, what it means, and how it connects to other ideas. Nighttime gives them uninterrupted space to do that. Intelligent people are more willing to explore ideas without guaranteed outcomes. They tolerate uncertainty better than average. Nighttime supports this risk tolerance. There's no immediate demand for results. Ideas can remain unfinished, and questions don't need answers right away. Psychologically, this lowers the cost of exploration. That's why night owls often engage in deep thinking that feels impractical during the day. Philosophy, abstract strategy, long-term planning, and conceptual work thrive in this environment. Moreover, emotional complexity is one of the most overlooked indicators of intelligence. Highly intelligent individuals don't simply experience emotions as raw reactions. They process them. They break them down. They ask where the emotion came from, what triggered it, whether it contradicts another feeling, and what it reveals about their internal state. Instead of labeling emotions good or bad, they examine structure. They look at cause and effect. They notice patterns across time. For them, an emotion is information. This level of emotional processing requires mental space. During the day, that space is limited. Social interaction demands regulation. Emotions must be filtered, adjusted, and often suppressed to function within social expectations. There's little room for deep internal analysis when attention is constantly pulled outward. Nighttime removes that pressure. When external demands drop, the mind turns inward. There's no audience, no performance, and no need to manage expression. Emotions that were postponed during the day resurface, not as chaos, but as material for reflection. Intelligent minds naturally use this quiet to examine emotional contradictions, unresolved tensions, and long-term motivations. This is why many people experience their clearest emotional insights late at night, not because night creates emotion, but because it allows uninterrupted processing. Over time, this habit builds self-awareness. Emotional intelligence increases not through constant interaction, but through deliberate reflection. The night becomes a psychological workspace where emotions are understood rather than reacted to. Despite this, society has long held a bias against people who operate at night. Early rising is often framed as a virtue, discipline, responsibility, and productivity, but this association has little to do with psychology and everything to do with history. Industrial systems required large groups of people to work at the same time. Factories needed synchronized labor. Schools mirrored these schedules to prepare future workers. Over generations, waking early became moralized. It stopped being a logistical preference and became a character judgment. Night-oriented individuals didn't fit this system, so they were labeled as lazy, unfocused, or irresponsible, not because of evidence, but because of incompatibility. Psychology refers to this as contextual mislabeling. Behavior is judged without considering cognitive variation. Instead of asking how someone thinks best, society asks how well they can form. Modern psychology strongly rejects this framing. Chronotype differences are biological, not moral. They are linked to genetics, brain chemistry, and circadian regulation. Intelligence does not disappear because someone performs better at night. Yet the bias remains, reinforced by rigid schedules and outdated success models. The cost of this misalignment is significant. When intelligent night owls are forced into early schedules, their performance often declines, not gradually, but measurably. Research consistently shows increased mental fatigue, reduced working memory, impaired emotional regulation, and lower creative output. Stress levels rise, not because the individual lacks discipline, but because their cognitive systems are being used outside optimal conditions. This is similar to forcing a left-handed person to write with their right hand. Output decreases, effort increases, and frustration builds. Over time, this creates self-doubt, burnout, and underperformance that is wrongly attributed to personal weakness. When these same individuals are allowed to work during their peak cognitive hours, results often reverse. Focus improves, creativity increases, problem solving becomes more fluid. This isn't a motivational issue, it's neurological efficiency. Sleep science makes an important distinction that is often ignored. Sleep timing is not the primary factor in cognitive health. Sleep quality and consistency are. A well-rested night owl who sleeps deeply and regularly is cognitively sharp. A chronically sleep-deprived early riser is not. Yet judgments are made based on when someone sleeps, not how well they function. This creates a flawed metric of success. Psychology argues for flexibility rather than uniformity. Intelligence does not operate on a single schedule. When systems demand conformity instead of optimization, they waste potential. Curiosity plays a major role here. For intelligent minds, curiosity intensifies. The absence of interruption allows thoughts to stretch further. Many highly intelligent individuals report that their deepest learning happens late at night, not because the material changes, but because their mental state does. The brain is calmer, distractions are minimal, motivation is internal rather than enforced. This state is ideal for complex thinking, abstract concepts, creative synthesis, and long-form reasoning. During the day, learning is often task-driven. At night, it becomes exploration-driven. This difference matters. Over time, night-oriented thinkers accumulate knowledge differently. They connect ideas across domains. They revisit questions repeatedly. They build depth rather than breadth. This is why many breakthroughs happen outside conventional working hours. However, operating out of sync with society has psychological consequences. Night owls often experience isolation, not because they avoid people, but because their active hours don't align with social availability. While others wind down, they become mentally alert. While others socialize, they reflect. This creates a sense of being out of step. This misalignment is often mistaken for antisocial behavior. In reality, it's rhythmic difference. This can lead to loneliness, especially when individuals feel misunderstood or judged, but it can also foster originality. Distance from the mainstream allows for independent thinking. Less exposure to constant social reinforcement leads to fewer borrowed ideas and more original ones. History reflects this pattern clearly. Many innovators, writers, scientists, and philosophers worked against the clock, not with it. They didn't reject structure out of rebellion, but because their minds worked differently. Psychology doesn't claim that night owls are superior. It argues that intelligence expresses itself through different rhythms. Some minds optimize execution, and others optimize exploration. Some thrive in structured mornings, and others in quiet nights. One is not better. There are different cognitive strategies. Some people build systems, and others question them. Some implement early, and others imagine late. When intelligence is measured only by conformity to one rhythm, entire categories of thinkers are undervalued. Reframing nocturnal intelligence is about recognizing variation, because intelligence doesn't disappear when the sun goes down. For many minds, that's when it finally has room to work. So what do you think? Have you noticed your best ideas, your clearest thinking, or your deepest focus happening after everyone else goes to sleep? Share your experiences in the comments, because chances are, someone else watching feels the same way. And if this video helped you see late night thinking through a psychological lens instead of a social judgment, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into how the human mind actually works.